I had been assigned to the Outpost on Lyrith 7, a mining colony on the edge of the Valtor Belt, under the supervision of the Xylarian authorities. The alien administration had grown increasingly stringent after repeated sabotage from rogue human factions. My role as a liaison officer was simple in theory: observe, report, and ensure that human laborers complied with Xylarian regulations. In practice, it was a minefield of tension, misunderstanding, and cultural friction. The first time I saw her, I knew things would never be ordinary. She emerged from the central administrative tower with the kind of authority that made the air itself seem to bend around her. Tall, lithe, and covered in armor that shifted with a metallic sheen, her eyes were a deep, liquid violet that seemed to pierce directly into my thoughts. I had been walking through the docking bay, checking reports, when a minor collision of arms occurred. I barely brushed her, perhaps bumped slightly as I turned a corner, and immediately, her reaction was fierce. "Get your hands off me, human," she snapped, her voice resonant and sharp enough to make nearby workers flinch. Her blade, attached to her belt, caught the light in a way that emphasized the warning. I froze, instantly aware of the centuries of custom, honor, and mistrust that lay behind her reaction. I'm sorry," I stammered. "It was an accident." Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in evaluation. "I do not forgive accidents lightly. Some humans are careless, some are reckless. You will show me if you are neither." Before I could respond further, she tapped a communication console. "Report to my quarters immediately. Now." Her quarters were unlike anything I had seen. The room was a harmonious blend of function and aesthetic, lit by a bioluminescent light source that shifted with the rhythm of her heartbeat. Walls were adorned with artifacts, both scientific and cultural, telling stories of Xylarian history, warfare, and philosophy. The air smelled faintly of minerals, cleansed and refined, creating an almost sacred atmosphere. She stood in the center of the room, unarmored but still radiating command. "You have been summoned because I need to understand why you exist in proximity to me without causing offense," she said. "Humans are unpredictable. Some instill fear. Some inspire chaos. You do neither." I swallowed. "I try to follow your protocols, to respect your people, and to keep my actions deliberate and measured." Her eyes softened slightly, though the intensity remained. "Deliberate action is rare among your kind. You will demonstrate your worth, not with force, but with insight." Over the following days, I was subjected to a series of tests. They were subtle, psychological, and physical, designed to measure my composure, judgment, and adaptability. She did not guide me overtly, but her presence was constant, her observations exacting. I learned quickly that every gesture, every misstep, every hesitation was noted. One afternoon, as we moved through the training corridors, she challenged me directly. "You understand the consequences of failure?" she asked, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of her blade. "Yes," I replied, "and I intend to succeed." "Do you understand the weight of responsibility?" she continued. "A misjudgment could cost lives, human and Xylarian alike." "I do," I said, steadying my voice, "and I will not falter." Her eyes flickered with something unreadable, approval, perhaps. She did not speak for the remainder of our session, but I felt her scrutiny as a physical presence, a force that demanded precision. It was during a security breach that our partnership truly began. Rogue operatives had infiltrated the outpost, seeking to exploit both human and Xylarian technology for profit. The alarms blared, and chaos erupted. Humans panicked, and automated defenses struggled to respond. Kalara, her name, I learned, was Kalara, moved like liquid steel. Her decisions were instantaneous, yet precise. She neutralized threats without unnecessary force, coordinated defenses, and guided me through the complex layout of the outpost. I realized that she did not just wield power. She understood it, manipulated it, and used it to preserve life rather than take it. Together, we pushed back the intruders. Her movements were art, and mine, human, instinctive, meshed with hers to create a rhythm of defense and strategy. By the end, the threat had been eliminated with minimal casualties, and I had gained her acknowledgement not just as a subordinate, but as a competent partner. Afterward, in her quarters, she finally allowed herself to speak freely. "You did not falter," she said. "Even when the breach threatened all we protect. You moved with thought, but with courage. That is uncommon." "I've had training," I replied, "and I follow your lead when I'm unsure." She studied me, her eyes reflecting the ambient light. Leadership is not about instruction alone. It is about understanding context, timing, and consequences. You have grasped that more quickly than many of my own people. I felt a swell of pride, tempered by the knowledge that her praise was tempered by scrutiny. "Then what now?" I asked. "Now," she said, her voice lower, more personal. "We continue. There is work to do, and you will continue to be observed, not as a subordinate, but as someone capable of understanding the weight of presence." Over the following months, our relationship evolved from scrutiny to collaboration. Kalara was exacting, demanding, and unyielding, but she also taught me insight, patience, and clarity. I learned the subtleties of Xylarian diplomacy, combat, and strategy. I began to see the universe not as a sequence of actions, but as a web of consequence, intention, and perception. One evening, as the twin moons of Lirith, 7 rose, she approached me during our patrol. "Few humans learn as quickly as you," she said. "Few humans understand restraint, and fewer still understand the necessity of observation before action." "I've learned from the best," I said, allowing a hint of humor, even if that includes a few sharp words and pointed lessons. Her lips quirked in the faintest smile. "Perhaps. But you also learn beyond words, beyond instruction. You anticipate, you calculate, you respond. That is rare among your kind." By the time the outpost stabilized and the colonists adapted to Xylarian oversight, we had become an inseparable unit. Humans and Xylarians alike began to see our partnership not as hierarchical, but complementary. She no longer summoned me into her room merely to evaluate or instruct. We discussed plans, contingencies, and even the moral implications of our actions. I realized that her initial fury, the sharp command to keep my hands off, had been a test of boundaries, of respect, and of understanding. And I had passed, not by instinct alone, but by recognizing her authority while asserting my own dignity. Years later, I recounted the story to other liaison officers as a lesson. Respect boundaries, I would say. Understand authority. Learn observation. And never mistake fear for control. The alien woman who first yelled at me taught me more than any manual or training exercise ever could. Kalara remained on Lirith, 7, overseeing the balance between human and Xylarian interests, a figure of fear and admiration alike. I continued my duties across the belt, but our paths crossed often. Each meeting was not of dominance, but of shared understanding and mutual respect. In the end, the lesson was simple. Authority without understanding is tyranny, and fear without context is chaos. The hands-off warning was not just a command. It was the first step in a journey of trust, insight, and partnership that neither human nor Xylarian could have predicted. And as I left her quarters each time, I knew that our collaboration, forged in tension and tempered by respect, had changed me forever. Not through fear, not through coercion, but through the rare and powerful clarity that comes when one being truly understands another across species, culture, and the vastness of the stars.